I want to take just a few minutes to to thank Middle Tennessee State University for being our presenting sponsor today. Let's all give them a round of applause. And I want to just throw out some kudos to MTSU. They have done a lot of work recently in terms of leadership among educational institutions in the state of Tennessee. Several professors and administrative folks at MTSU over the last several years have been responsible for the legislation that was passed providing priority registration for veterans at our state schools. And Dr. Hillary Miller here in our audience today helped lead that initiative, so thank you very much for your work on that front. We also want to recognize that MTSU has been recognized for the last 4 years by Military Times Magazine as a Best for Vets college and also a military-friendly school. So they're doing a lot of great work along those lines, and we appreciate that very much. And further to that work, earlier this year the university made further advancements towards helping their veteran students by hiring Lieutenant General Keith Huber, a 38-year Army veteran, as Senior Advisor for Veteran and Leadership Initiatives. His initial task has been surveying current veteran students and evaluating current programs. And General Huber and his wife retired to Franklin, so they're local folks, and we're very thankful to have him helping us in our community, and I will turn it over to him at this time.
To those of you still in uniform, my deepest respect for continuing to carry the fight. For those of you who have served in uniform, my sincere appreciation. For those of you who are military families, you clearly are our heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for your sacrifice. Before us today, we have two very distinguished leaders, Miss Kelsey and Mr. Brophy. And before I turn over to them their opportunity to explain to you what they're doing, I want to give you a different perspective from what we've heard this morning, perhaps. My grandfather left a small farming community in Illinois and went to World War I, came back. My father left that same farming community, went to World War II, flew P-38s in the Pacific in World War II. And when I say that around Air Force people, why they get all excited, and I go, calm down. It was the Army Air Corps then. Air Force didn't exist. And then I stopped my commentary as to whether or not it was a good idea for it to exist. I had a draft number of 3 on the 1st of July, 71 when I entered West Point. I didn't go there to evade the draft, but I would have gone to Vietnam at that time frame. My grandfather only left his farm in Illinois twice. Once to go to World War I, and the other time to ensure I didn't escape from being inducted into West Point. The reason I went there, I had an acceptance at University of Maine and Cornell, but the reason I went to West Point on that day was not because I came from a career military family or because I knew what I was getting into. I went there because I saw the pride in my parents' eyes. And that was good enough for me. And even though it was a long 4 years for me, and I wasn't a particularly stellar cadet, I appreciated that fact, and never did I imagine that I would have the privilege for 38 years of my life to serve on active duty and wear the uniform, nor to spend the last 2 years of my career in command, in combat, in Afghanistan. While I was in Afghanistan, people would come by the house. And I'm blessed to have a 32-year-old son that I've been gone a third of his life. I have 2 grandsons, 8 and 2. And then my gift from the Lord is my precious 8-year-old daughter. And I've been gone half of her life, and she's, now that we're settled in Franklin, she's moved 7 times in her 8 years. And some people can't appreciate the privilege to have a home and to finally be home. That those who serve in uniform spend their entire adult lives protecting the families of the world, often at the expense of their own. So people would come by the house and they'd look at my little girl and they'd go, "Where's your daddy?" She'd look up and she'd go, "Afghanistan." And I'm ashamed to say that the majority of the people's response was, "Oh, we're sorry." And Alexis would look up at her mom. She'd go, "Mommy, why are they sorry? Daddy's a soldier. He's keeping us safe. He's taking care of the bad guys. Why are they sorry?" And then their next question would be, "Well, when's he coming home?" "He left when I was 5. He'll be home when I'm 7. Her expectation was that people would comprehend the sacrifice of our military families. Her expectation was, because she spent her lives on military installations with a commonality and a common bond and a strength of character that our parents instilled in all of us, that people would comprehend that. I guess I'd been gone about 20 months, and Alexis looks up at her mommy and she goes, "Mommy, when's Daddy coming home? How many more bad guys can there be?" You know, and nobody had the courage to look her in the eye and go, "Alexis Ann, unfortunately, there's an unlimited supply of evil people who would steal our freedom and harm our families. That is the reality of growing up in a military family." So aside from the leadership roles and the training and the human dimension of these 2 patriots in front of you, I submit to you, like all of us, their character began at home. And before you sit 2 very proud brats. Somebody tried to change that terminology. I'm fine with that, with being a brat, with being a family member, a child of a military member who went through those deployments and those combat tours and wondering if your parents were going to come home, and the parent who was home being both mother and father, and all those missed opportunities. And now the attempt to reintegrate. I mean, even as much as my wife and I had been through deployments, when I came back after 2 years, I mean, she looked at me and goes, "Huber, I'm not sure who you are." And I spent my first year of retirement trying to demonstrate to my family my love and respect and trying to reintegrate. Now, as I enter my 2nd year, why, it's like, are you ever going to leave the house? You haven't figured out how to unload the dishwasher yet. You know, I know you spent 14 years as a general. I know you retired as a 3-star, but I'm not your aide. I'm not your driver. I'm not going to do anything for you. Go out and get some job. And so this transition of what you do that is honorable, how do you determine what organization then you belong to, is a tough transition for all of us. So I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your level of support for this concept of hiring veterans, but it's not about veterans. It's about the level of commitment that those who serve, either as family members or in uniform, that commitment to a concept larger than yourself, that commitment at times being willing to give your life to defend other people, whether they recognize it or appreciate it or not. The commitment to make the organization they join better. That is what employers should be looking at. Not what attire, not what hairstyle, I part mine down the middle. Not what gender, not what size, not what age. You should look at the level of commitment to the organization and to the honor and strength of character that our parents instilled upon all of us. It's your turn.
Well, thank you, General Huber. Appreciate that. Thanks as well to Beth and the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce for bringing all of us together here today. We have just a little bit of a different, probably kind of topic set in that we want to talk about an existing program that's going on here in Tennessee and frankly in 2 other states. That's an annual veterans hiring program that we're pretty proud of. And so Melinda, who is here with the Tennessee Department of Labor and our first champion in government for this program, she and I are going to talk to you about the program, what it means. And we hope you'd listen with 2 ears. One would be as an employer or participant with the military community, how does this affect and will it for the benefit for the things that you're doing day to day? Is there a way you can participate in Paychecks for Patriots meaningfully? And then second, that Paychecks for Patriots started as an idea and germinated and grew. And I expect that there are an enormous amount of good ideas that exist in this room today that will approach military hiring and military community employment in a way that can change lives. And so please take this as a small way of encouragement of taking that idea and embracing it and moving it forward and trying to find the other stakeholders that may be in this room with you as well. As General Huber said, I grew up in the Army. My father retired here in Tennessee when I was in high school. I went to Franklin High School. I graduated from Middle Tennessee State University and caught the first Greyhound bus to Washington, D.C. that I could. Spent 20 years working in and around the federal government in D.C. For a lot of great names. I'm biased. Fred Thompson, Bill Frist, and Marsha Blackburn, most notably, but also for the Navy's think tank. So I had a basis of understanding in the Army and the Army community and a basis in understanding of the Navy. So what I would say is I came back home to Dollar General in 2009 with a personal passion of helping the military community. It would have gone nowhere if I didn't work for a great company. And so the ethos of Dollar General for its 75 years has been to serve others. It is part of our motto. It is, I am graded on it like every one of our 100,000 employees. We are graded on our ability to serve others as employees of Dollar General. Second to that is having a great leadership team that understands how best we can add value to serving others in other communities. My colleague, Bob Ravner, is our Chief People Officer. He is a Naval Academy grad who spent several years in the Navy before rolling out in the private world and has that great understanding of the right and left brain of what it means to be in the military and what it means to translate outside of the military. Another great colleague of mine is here with us today, Kelsey Beachy. I would ask you to wave your hand if you wouldn't mind, Kelsey. Chelsea does a lot of great things for us, but to include being a part of our absorption of military folks into Dollar General the most appropriate way. So what I like to do, because I like to brag, what I like to do is just really kind of recount how the idea came to be and then talk about where it is now with Melinda, and then answer any questions. And so we built in a lot of question and answer time, and I hope you have a lot of great questions for Melinda. So with that, so in terms of the steady state of where the problem, what we were looking at with regard to the problem. The idea came about in 2011 as Dollar General was moving into California. We had not had stores or a distribution center on the West Coast yet, and we were faced with the problem of trying to find a great employment base to be able to support that expansion there. As we looked at the problem, we sought to leverage some of our military connections, mostly through ESGR. Is there anyone from GSGR that's here today? Great. Employer Supportive Guard and Reserve is a wonderful organization that you as employers need to investigate and embrace. Dollar General has signed their contract that says that we're going to look after our responsibilities as employers with ready reservists, and so I would commend that to you to investigate. But we leveraged our relationships with ESGR and created a conversation with the California National Guard. And it surprised both me and Bob, our Chief People Officer, that consistently we were hearing in the states that unemployment amongst the National Guard was twice the state average, which seemed untenable to us. And so California had created a program where they specifically put state dollars behind an effort to systematically create employment opportunities for their guardsmen. So when Bob came back from our initial foray into California, he turned to me and asked if there was a way we could do that in other states. Being a Tennessee-focused person, I wanted to try to start it here. And I knew that there had to be a couple of things that were kind of our edicts. One, we could never ask the state for a specific dollar that wasn't already attributed to what we were going to ask. So there was no budget line offering. In 2011, states didn't have it anyway, and the idea would have gone nowhere if you would have asked for the dollars. The second is that we wanted to be corporate brand agnostic. We did not want this to be an effort selflessly, candidly. We were hoping to encourage other businesses to jump into the fray with us. We can't solve the problem alone, but all of us together could make a big dent. And so we sought to create a brand that did not specifically aggrandize one particular company over another. And we sought to not only focus on the companies, great companies like HCA, that already zero in on military hiring, but also those companies that are a little antsy about it. And so if we as a big company could bring them along, that's what we sought to do. So Bob was kind enough to have one of his folks, a woman, my former colleague Kelly Stover is now with Amazon. She and I spent several hours at a whiteboard kind of framing this out. We took it to, I kind of very proudly took it to a great friend of mine over in the governor's office, and who first introduced me to what the Tennessee Department of Labor was going to do. Frankly, she said, you know, we want to advance employment broadly for the state of Tennessee, and why don't you work through the Tennessee Department of Labor and what they have going on? So I didn't know anybody at the Tennessee Department of Labor, so I called back on my friends at ESGR, and we sat down with General Haston, who loved our ideas about what we wanted to do, bringing employers together for the betterment of the military community. And he said, you know, you need to go see Melinda over at the Tennessee Department of Labor. So we went back to the drawing board. We looked at what Tennessee Department of Labor was doing and realized that the governor had invested a lot of time and capital into a great database of jobs called Jobs for Tennessee Online. We looked at the military side of the problem through the lens of what we would consider our archetype of our end user. And so that means who's the person who's going to most need this. And so the end user that we had in mind was a junior enlisted soldier recently returning from the desert, Afghanistan or Iraq. It's 2 a.m. He's up with the baby because the wife's the one with the paycheck. And he's sitting looking at the computer screen going, man, I got to get a job. So where is he going to go? And we thought that after spending that time in the Army, especially with the National Guard, he is going to ask, what's my command doing for me in order to find employment? And so we looked at the opportunities as we looked at Jobs for Tennessee Online. It did not have a great pathway for military applicants to really leverage and exploit the information that was on the state's website. And so we then did get the meeting with Melinda, which was awesome. I didn't know how it was going to go, candidly. We were kind of ushered into a small little conference room at Department of Labor headquarters, a lot less people than are in this room today. And we pitched an idea to a woman who I didn't think cared at all really about the military. The response was overwhelming. Her grasp of the problem, her understanding of how what she's doing at the Department of Labor could fundamentally change the lives of Tennessee military folks was heartwarming. She was the first one to really get it. And it has been Katie bar the door since then. So with that, I'll pass the baton to Melinda.
when you have a room full of people that you truly do respect, and I'm sitting there listening, I mean, this is Dollar General Corporation, okay? And those of you, I'm an anti-Walmart person, no offense to anybody in Walmart, but, you know, I love Dollar General. And after about 2 hours of listening about what they wanted us to do and how was it going to work, I looked at my friend here and I said, we'll do this. We can do this. So logistically, after everybody left, I said, what did I just commit us to do, okay? We have our Tennessee Career Centers from Memphis to Mountain City. We have the structure there. We have the employer base. We have Jobs for TN online. 90,000 jobs for Tennessee employers, veterans and general public. So we sat down and I said, we're going to do a one-day hiring event in the state of Tennessee, across Tennessee, all at the same time. Logistics. We're talking about logistics in the military. You talk about logistics, partnerships, working together. We had to make this work. Obviously, I can't be in 13 locations at the same time. And then on top of that, since I'm over communications, I said, we're going to have 3 press conferences all going at the same time. One in Nashville, one in Memphis, and one in Knoxville. Nuts. Just total nuts. And you know, you go home and think, but you have to believe. So we sat down with the Department of Military, and we had HCA and Nissan. You had players that were fully engaged, fully committed in what we were doing. 2 factors, I think, that make the difference between Paychecks for Patriots, because we do a lot of hiring events for the general public. One, I wanted to ensure that every employer that participated had a job, period. Now, did I get some disgruntled employers that wanted to participate, that wanted to come in and sell Pampered Chef and Avon and Tupperware? It's great stuff, but that's not what our service members and our veterans want. That's not a sustainable job in the state of Tennessee. It does not meet the demand. So I made sure that every employer that participated in all locations had to have their jobs posted on Jobs for TN. I wanted to make sure that they weren't selling something, that they weren't trying to recruit someone, that they were not trying to sell them a credit card or a debit card. This was the feedback that our veteran service staff shared with me. So I did a lot of talking and a lot of hand-holding, and, you know, we got to sell this. It was an easy sell because at that time, employers are looking for qualified applicants. You know, nervous, absolutely. Scared to death the day of. We could not have had a better event. Fast forwarding this past year, we had over 1,745 Tennessee veterans and spouses that came through, all looking for jobs. We had a hiring event here. We had the speaker, Beth Harwell. We have legislators that are involved and fully engaged in this hiring event. And it's always good. We're very competitive. I know Dollar General is in a lot of states. We care about Tennessee, period. I'm a Tennessee girl. I make no apologies for that. Obviously, my accent kind of gives me away a little bit, but you know, Tennessee, I want to make sure that we have jobs in Tennessee and we're meeting the needs of the Tennessee employer. We had 295 employers in Tennessee representing 195 individual corporations. Eastman in Upper East Tennessee, Kingsport. I mean, I could go on and on. HCA, Nissan, large Jack Daniels joined us this year. It was huge. Gibson Guitar, all had Tennessee jobs. All were looking for that right person. And when you have Smith and Nephew out of Memphis that came in and said, I don't know about this. And I said, well, participate in it in Memphis and then in Nashville. He came up to me and he said, we pay a lot of money to do recruiting. And I know Avery will agree with that as well. You spend a lot of money, HCA, Nissan does, recruiting people. No charge, costs zero to the employer, zero, okay? No charge to the employer, no charge to the veteran, and the bottom line is most of the veterans that came through usually get hired on the spot, and that's a win-win for everyone. So it has been something we're exceptionally proud of. I think I live and breathe Paychecks for Patriots. It is part of who I am. It's part of what I believe in. And like Steve, I grew up in a very military family, World War I Navy, my grandfather, World War II, my father. So it's very near and dear to my heart, but it is the right thing to do for our veteran population. And it's very successful, and when we're competing with other states, as we do every day because we border 7 states, competition's tough. So when Tennessee can take the lead and be recognized by the United States Department of Labor as a national best practice addressing veterans hiring initiatives, we're kind of proud of that. We're not doing it for that. It's great to get recognized. Bottom line is, did we serve that service member? Did he or she find a job at this event? I want to know that. I want to get feedback. I will say this last year, I have to brag a little, Paychecks for Patriots actually launched our social media within Department of Labor. We have a very small team, a small group of people, and because of our partnership with Dollar General, and I will say partnership in every sense of the word, HCA, Nissan, CCA, Jack, they're partners, true partners within what we do. They believe in what we do. 10 locations, 10 events, all going at the same time. Feedback mostly from the employers and from the veterans. This was the greatest thing. Smith & Nephew said, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars recruiting. This is by far one of the best events, most organized events I've ever attended, period. I was kind of proud of that, you know. It was like, that was a big deal, and it's free. So that's really important to us. The news media, we got 40, those of you in social media, 49,583 impressions in less than 3 weeks in state government. This is a best practice where private sector and government work together in a common mission, and it's mission accomplished. I will go on record as I can brag just a little. We did receive, those of you in our world, the Public Relations Society of America. I don't sing, I don't dance, and I definitely don't act. But it's the coveted, okay? It's the Oscar, the Grammy, the Emmy. It's the big kahuna. You get that? That's a big deal. So we won jointly with Dollar General for the past 2 years. And I was very honored to be part of that with Mr. Ravner and with Steve. This year, Dollar General being the let's get this for the right reason, we don't want the publicity, we want you to enter independently. We don't have a staff, we can't do this, I don't know about this. Last minute, last hour, procrastination on Thursday afternoon, we're throwing together some things. We got the numbers, we got the stuff. If you don't play, you don't win, right? So we entered it, and I said, well, we'll see. So I'm sitting there, and we entered in 4 different categories, and we're competing with some pretty large corporations. I mean, marketing consulting firms that have lots of money and lots of staff to do this. We won 4. We entered 4. We won 4. I was jumping up out of my seat. I'm so proud of that. I say that not to be bragging, and it's partnerships and people coming together. So I told Steve, I said, rather than myself and my commissioner going jointly with Dollar General to receive it, I'm taking my team, because this is the only public-private entry in the public relations realm. And they were not voted by Tennesseans. They were voted by somebody in Las Vegas during March Madness. So, I don't know. But we're real happy about it. We're very proud about it. But moving forward, most important is that we're meeting the needs of our Tennessee employers. And that is what we do within the Department of Labor. We connect job seekers, veterans, and general public with the employer sector. That's what we do. And we do it quite well. Not everybody else wants to do it. We're charged. We're Labor and Department of Labor and Workforce Development. So very passionate about Paychecks for Patriots, and hope that you all will participate. And we're going to open it up. I can talk about Paychecks all day.
Before we open it up, I'd add one more kind of area, and that is, how does this fit in with a lot of the other great ideas and efforts that are going on? Dollar General belongs to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and participates in hiring our heroes where appropriate. It's been a great effort that they do that you mentioned, Colonel George. Tremendous partnerships. I like to say Dollar General is just a different stick in the bag. We're subtly different. We believe that every military community, every state has a different kind of military community based on what types of military posts they have, based on what that National Guard segment and Ready Reservists makeup is within the state, their populations and their current economy. And so we actually were asked by the national chairman of ESGR to take that first year's idea of Paychecks and move it down to Florida and see how we would do it there. It's a whole different look of the Paychecks for Patriots events in Florida and then later in Georgia. And so as we kind of move this around into other states, it does look different. It is different than joining forces, which really just tries to create an understanding of the numbers more than, as I understand, facilitates the actual hiring of military. But it really calls attention to the challenges faced. So joining forces, Chase for 100,000, hiring our heroes, all different. Paychecks for Patriots is one of those that if you haven't considered it, I hope you will. And we'll look forward to another year. We haven't set the date this year.
October, sometime in October.
Apparently we've set the date this year. And I hope that you would consider participating if you have jobs and the ability to hire. So with that, happy to answer any questions you may have. Yes, sir.
With the Paychecks for Patriots, is the positions available that are offered there, are they typically the low-level or entry positions, or are there management tech positions, or like skilled and trade positions available as well being offered?
Do you mind if I? Go ahead. So thank you for asking that. No, they are, and there's a story that goes with it. So when we sat and talked with General Haston about the idea, he was smart enough to bring his command sergeant major. And it was a Cracker Barrel. And so as we got up from the meeting, we were all energized. General Haston was juiced about it. And I tugged the command sergeant major on the side and I said, hey, I know this is cool, but it ain't that good. So where are the things that we need to really shape up? He said two things that really stood out to me. One is do not prescribe for the soldier the job that they want to get into after the military. Just because they were in some MOS function in the military does not necessarily mean that that's what they want to do on the outside. So don't expect that that's the natural progression. What that did was create a passion for us to go out and find as broad of economic opportunity through the employer base as we could. And so we looked at a series of different industries and tried to get as many of them in there. So to answer your question, no, it's not just those positions that are entry level, but it does include those. Every rung on the ladder should be available to our folks coming out of the military. And all of those jobs have to be available 24/7 on the state's website. But it was a huge passion of ours to make sure that no one was telling the soldier or the veteran or the spouse what they needed to be doing with their lives going forward after service, but instead giving them the opportunities to start the conversations and hopefully start the career that was going to make the change in their life.
I think one of the things that we look at, especially with the employer sector, and my husband has a medical device company in Nashville, and he was looking to hire a specific skill set, and he was having a very difficult time. He hears me speak of Paychecks basically 24/7, and what we do within the Department of Labor. And so he actually did not have an immediate position, but he hired a veteran 3 months after Paychecks concluded, and he's still on board and is doing an excellent job. So, you may not get a job immediately, but what I've tried to do to make sure that anyone that participates in Paychecks have immediate jobs opening at every level. So that, because everybody comes from different walks of life with different skill sets. And that's the match, and that's what's made this different than a lot of other hiring events and a lot of other things that we do. At Paychecks, we don't have training providers there. We don't have other resources available because we do that. And there's a great distinction between a career fair, a job fair, and a hiring event. And Paychecks for Patriots is a hiring event with hiring employers only. So I think that's the distinction between a lot of different things that we do within the Department of Labor and through our Career Center services. And, you know, we do a lot. I think my division did over 118 hiring events just last year across Tennessee. So we may bring in training providers and some other things, but with Paychecks only, we just want to make sure that our military service members have immediate jobs and that they can go from point A to point B and hired on the spot, if at all possible. And I think that's been our success with making this work, and we're exceptionally proud of that.
So, and in terms of hiring, when we went to Florida, when we started this in Tennessee, we really were not focused on the actual numbers. We wanted to see how the mechanisms worked. When we took it to Florida, they were hypersensitive about focusing on the numbers of the military community that were coming into our hiring fairs, and then looking at the tax data 90 days out to determine how many actually got jobs from the event. The percentage of jobs coming from our Paychecks for Patriots effort, we had 10 different sites in Florida, was 31% from that one day where the 2 hours that those folks came, which from what I gather, I would, you please correct me, but Colonel George, but I understand 10% is about the average catch rate that you're looking at. So we're feeling pretty proud about it. And if someone has another question while we're listening to that, if you all have an employer, if you have a point to make of something that's falling down for you as you're trying to hire veterans, I'd love to hear that. Maybe it's something we can roll in. So any other questions?
It's one of the things that Beth mentioned in her opening statement. Commissioner Phillips went around and we were actually Beth hosted and the chamber hosted listening tours and to listen to what Tennessee employers were saying. And I went along as the communications administrator and would take notes in all 13 local workforce investment areas. And by the time I got to the second, and Beth has heard this, the second meeting, I quit taking notes because we heard the exact same things from every employer, large, medium, and large corporations. They can't follow instructions, show up on time, and they're drug-free. Military, veteran. I mean, you've already met that. So I think being able, and that's how Smith and Nephew actually became part of Paychecks for Patriots in Memphis. So just listening to what the employers were saying, you all hear that. I'm a former HR person myself. So if you don't hire the right person during the right, your reputation's on the line. And so it's really important that we meet what you need. And I think that's why Paychecks has been so successful, is the fact that you do have jobs and you're not selling something, you're not promoting something, that you're on and you're engaging with that veteran, and that veteran knows this is just for them. It's not open to the general public, it's just for our veterans. And I think that's the distinction between some of the other events that we do across the state. Yes.
And the process of when the registration becomes available and what the day will look like.
Okay, absolutely. The day begins, usually our hiring events with employers usually begin at 10 o'clock in the morning and conclude at 2 in the afternoon. So we do 10 locations. This last year we did the Johnson City area, we did Knoxville, Chattanooga, Nashville, Tullahoma, Jackson, Memphis. Because that's basically the commuting pattern, and that's where the bulk of a lot of the employment is. This year we moved it because we've grown. We moved it from a hotel in Nashville to LP Field, which was fantastic. So it was huge. We had a great turnout, but the logistics means that those employers are set up, ready to go on or before 10 o'clock in the morning. I asked them to be there at 9. They conclude at 2. And we have interviewing places where people can go and interview on site. And we make sure that they bring their resumes. The registration this year was a little easier. It's like when you go to Ticketmaster and you go to a concert, you just kind of swipe in, you can pre-register, no lines. It was perfect. And the logistical pieces of it, I'll give full credit to our Career Center staff that help us coordinate that, and with our partners to make sure that everyone is welcome. They come in, they know exactly, and we post by location which employers are going to be attending by location. And we strongly recommend that they do a little research. So we posted what positions. We also post what companies at each of the locations. And some of them, I know HCA was at multiple locations and have been every year, as was CCA and other corporations. Dollar General at every location. So if you're going to, I want to go to Tullahoma, it may be a different group of employers than what is actually in Nashville. So it just depends on the region, and it depends on actually who's hiring at that time. So that's the key as well. Questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And I know that Dollar General has had some really good success hiring veterans. What would you tell a company that is thinking about hiring veterans, why they should, and what has been Dollar General's specific secrets of success in hiring veterans in your company?
So the secret of our success is our Chief People Officer, Bob Ravner, our CEO, Rick Dreiling. And frankly, the folks that started the company 75 years ago, J.L. Turner and his son, Cal Sr., created a company in 1939 that sought to be of benefit to their neighbors. They were wholesalers, and they needed to offload a lot of inventory, so they created an environment where people could take advantage of those price savings. J.L. Turner and his wife were functionally illiterate, as were a lot of their neighbors, so it was not unusual. So they used the dollar price point in a way to understand the dignity of their neighbors, so that if one of their folks came in with $2, $3, $5, they knew they could pull 5 things off the shelf, and they'd meet what they need at the register. So it's a respectful environment that was created, and this notion, I am not tongue-in-cheek about the notion of serving others. It is typically pointed, because of what I just mentioned, in the adult literacy, ESL, adult education kind of environment. That's where our philanthropic focus is. So as Dollar General has a knowledgeable and willing leadership, especially at the role of Chief People Officer, that understands the inherent value of military folks to our business model, that's one of the absolute keys. For me, what I have found is that there are kind of 3 major variables that have a hard time coming together. And that is that you either understand the military, and it's like Winston Churchill, where he talks about U.S. and Great Britain. We're a similar culture limited by a common language. And so there's a lot of overtalk between the communities of civilian world, be it government or private sector, and the military. And it's this notion of trying to figure out what's important to folks in the military and how they're arranged, and reading the mind of that soldier and how he's going to approach going and getting a job, along with what the employer needs. Some of them, like with Avery and HCA, some of them are very sophisticated at how they understand and know it. Dollar General, I would tell you, I think we're emerging in that. We are learning every day how better to encourage all kinds of diversity, to include the military into our business model. And it's that, it's the openness to do that that is another part of our secret. I would say my personal philosophy on military flowing into the private sector is, let me back up, the third part of all of that is government. And it's the notion that You can't create, well, you can, and they exist, but I think the effectiveness of Paychecks for Patriots deals with the fact that the governor is the commander-in-chief of his military community here, whether they're veterans or they're National Guard ready reservists. And it's the understanding that every governor was a jobs governor when we started this, and how do you work within that flow that that governor is creating to maximize the availability of jobs and economic opportunity for the military. So those are kind of the last leg of that stool is, what does an employer want? So those are the three. My perspective on Dollar General, and I'll tell you, I'm the government affairs guy. I'm not an HR guy. But I have the three understandings of government, military, and now learning the big business. And my thoughts on where the obstacles are in this have kind of moved over the past 3 years. I was hyper-focused on MOS converters. Got to have the MOS. And you talked about it a lot in your opening remarks. You're zeroed in on exactly what your alphanumeric nomenclature is and what that means to what you're going to do at the end. After hearing the Command Sergeant Major, I broke away from that because it presupposes that someone doing that in the military wants to do that for the next 20, 30 years of their economic engagement. And so I have moved away from MOSs, where civilian HR people can't understand, into attributes. And so it's zeroing in on a lot of the attributes that I think you were talking about, Colonel George, and understanding not only soft skills but hard skills. And getting what is the actual type of person that you want there. We've talked about it already. Is it really a bachelor's degree? What does the bachelor's degree give you? What is the so what in that will get you back to ground zero of what you need? So that has been a large part of my evolution on how to think about bringing the military in. The second part is, if you get really good at this, I think at some point you need to think about things in terms of a value proposition. And that's a two-sided coin. The military candidate needs to look at what they have to offer through the lens of, what is my value to this employer? And how am I going to advance their day-to-day stated mission in a way that other candidates won't be able to do? You again center on those attributes. I think as well, candidly, I think that the shoe's on the wrong foot with military hiring. I think employers should be out there working very, very hard to find them. And so my conversations with my counterparts in HR have been, what's our value proposition to a soldier? Where do we align on the structure? Again, I love Colonel George's presentation because, you can just Google the pay salary of E1 to O10, and you can find out where the job that you're going to post fits into that community. And it starts to get your ballpark of whether or not you want someone who is an individual operator or in management or as a strategic asset for your company. And so being able to be thoughtful about who it is you're going to hyper-target to go after within the military community, and then figure out how the job you're going to offer them actually benefits them. And so a store manager at Dollar General is, to my mind, is an NCO in the Army. I'm not looking for a JMO to come in and run a 8-person store. It's a E5, E6 who's been through his non-commissioned officer training. I've forgotten all the names, warrior training or BNOC or what have you, but has had that level of training, has used that level of training in a real-life environment, and is able to bring that to bear to Dollar General, where we're going to leave him alone. He's going to run that store. He's going to run that store day in, day out, run the play that he's being told to run, and we're going to support him with all of the logistics and big data and HR from the headquarters. So the value proposition is the next evolution of my thinking as it comes to an employer looking at how to hire from the military community. So, sorry to give you a short answer.
One of the things also, Mr. Rabner, who is the Chief People Officer, also now serves as our chairman of the State Workforce Board. So he brings that military, he also brings that corporate America piece of it. So he has really pushed the veteran hiring within all government. And I think that's, to my knowledge, that's a first. So it's been a real positive having him serve as our chairman of our State Workforce Board. It's very, it's a win-win for everyone.
Any thoughts or comments on what's challenging you as an employer? Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask a question. The last two administrations have done a great job of bringing, big ticket clients or employers to Tennessee, and obviously they have lots of suppliers, et cetera, that follow along that are smaller to mid-size and kind of fly under the radar, but are equally important in terms of providing employment opportunities. So the question is the state, when it's negotiating deals to bring employers of any size and magnitude to the state, requiring or tying any sort of performance goals in terms of hiring veterans as part of their incentive package to come to Tennessee?
Great question. A couple of things that goes on with hiring. We, as a State Department of Labor, are not out recruiting. That would be our sister Department of Economic and Community Development. Prior to, and I've worked in government a long time, so I've seen a lot of changes, a lot of different leaders. But before, Economic and Community Development and Department of Labor really didn't communicate as well. It was like, okay, and you probably will agree with me, being a former veteran outreach person, they were here, they were selling, and there was a breakdown in communication. So the number one thing that we do now is to make sure that we have the sustainable workforce within before somebody comes in, because you can sell, but you've got to be able to produce, and you've got to be able to fill those critical roles to be able to move forward. And you base that, and I think Rutherford County has done an outstanding job in making sure that, and now everybody else is kind of taking your model and pushing it. Well, I live in Wilson County now, and it's booming. So we're feeling that growth, but do we have the workforce to be able to move that forward? And to be able, if you're a federal contractor, you are required to post all of your jobs, and you are required to go through this. But to mandate that somebody hire a veteran, there's really not a requirement unless you're a federal contractor. But is it the right thing to do? Absolutely. I think and I'm glad that those of you that are in SHRM, is to re-educate HR professionals, because I think it was very much stated, there's so much stigma. I hired 27 veterans at our sister company, which was at that time Big Bend Technology. Now it's Rhythm North America in Sparta, Tennessee. I wanted to make sure, because I knew the skill sets that they had. So was I charged with hiring veterans? Absolutely not. But I was committed to hiring veterans because I knew what they brought. We were not a non-federal contractor. So I think we have to do a much better job in educating HR professionals, and those of you that are, you're challenged. You've got to learn workers' compensation, you've got to keep up with all the unemployment law, you've got to keep up with all these things, and there's stigma, and so we need to, as a group, as an organization, and as a chamber, re-educate the HR people, and they change. It's a continuing education process to ensure that they're, it's well stated, sir, that you deal with discrimination and people that bring different issues into the workplace every single day. We do as a state agency, we do as in the private sector. So to mandate that they do, we are to give veterans preference. Within the Department of Labor, we hold any job order that an employer places, and we make sure that those veterans get preference. They get notified prior to, as they did with Paychecks, that these people are hiring, and that we make sure that we're doing everything that we can do to connect those veterans to employment opportunities in Tennessee. And it's a win-win, I think, for all Tennesseans. But it continues to be an issue in making sure that we fill qualified jobs with qualified people. Absolutely. And we're charged. That's our charge within the Department of Labor. Thank you all.
Thank you all.